everyone, and welcome to the New Moon in Virgo intention setting practice. I'm Phaedra. I'm the artist and astrologer of Mystick, Physick, Astrology, and I use Western Sidereal Astrology in my practice to help you reconnect with your soul purpose and to remember why you came into this life to begin with. And my aim with the broadcast is really to provide guidance on how we can use the transiting planets and the energy that they create around us to affect our lives in a positive way. So approaching our transit consciously, attention, and learning to respond to what we're experiencing rather than simply react to experiencing. And we're going to be approaching this particular exercise from a zodiac standpoint. So if you do not have your sidereal natal chart, you're going to need that. And you can look up your sign placements online using our handy dandy super free calculator at mystickphysick.com/sidereal tools to find out for absolutely free. So you'll want to type in your birth data, grab a quick screenshot, or jot down your sign and your sidereal rising sign, and we'll be working with those in tonight's practice. And so what I'm going to do tonight is I'll be guiding you through some prompts and some contemplation around healing illness and trauma in order to allow healthy behaviors into your life. I'll be guiding you through some prompts to help identify helpful daily habits that you can establish with the Virgo new moon, because we all know new moons are the best time to start something new, and around setting practical intentions for self-care, and this time for self-love. We're going to talk a little bit about self-love this time because we have Venus retrograde while we're doing our new moon intention setting practice. And we don't always talk about self-love, but self-love and self-care are very intrinsically tied. And while care, especially caring for health or caring for the body or caring for someone's needs, are very much activities that are related to Virgo, love is something that we associate with Venus. And because they're tied, we're going to kind of tie those two ideas together in the broadcast this time around. But welcome to the new moon in Virgo. What we'll do first is we'll talk a little bit about this particular new moon and what we can kind of expect around the new moon. And I will go into more detail by rising sign, which house this new moon is falling in for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign and what the themes of that house are. And that way, if you're not super familiar with the zodiac or the houses or astrology, you can down which house this falls in and what those themes are, and you can choose to work specifically with that house, and that aligns the practice with your own natal blueprint, which is exactly how we want to do it. And then of course you can always watch the replay and repeat the practice again for your sun sign and get double the benefit. But we'll talk a little bit at first about the new moon in Virgo. We'll move on to the rising signs and houses, and then towards the end we're going to talk about the archetype and themes of Virgo. And we'll get into some prompts to help us really think deeply and intently on what initiations we can make in alignment with this new moon. And we'll set our intentions around those initiations. It'll be a lot of fun. So welcome to the new moon in Virgo. So the October 8th new moon, it opens a path to health and healing. It opens that path through ideas around reconnecting with health, with eating healthy, nourishing foods. Remember, Virgo rules the digestion. Virgo rules food. Virgo rules like gardening, right? Growing food, whereas Libra is the heart, the following sign, Libra. So we'll also explore connecting through ideas around nature and the natural world. Through gardening, we talked about that, through creative trades and crafts, especially those involving weaving and the fiber arts, which also belong to Virgo. So this is a new moon that you can use to explore any of those kinds of areas and more, right? Because we're only really going to have time to get into a fraction of what Virgo is. But during this new moon, we might feel more inclined to be practical. Okay, to find comfort through simple things like being organized, being productive, contributing in whatever way we can, whether that's to our family, whether that's to society or to our community, but being productive and contributing our share, basically, of the workload. We can also feel inclined to express our emotions through those types of behaviors, through tending to our loved ones, especially through acts like nursing or cooking for them, or providing like hearty food, a warm, dry hearth, those sorts of environments, or environments that evoke those sorts of feelings. There is, though, for this particular new moon in Virgo, there's an underlying chance of unexpected news coming out around this new moon, because we have Uranus involved, which also brings us an underlying possibility of like travel accidents, right? Because Mercury's the natural ruler of Virgo, and Mercury governs travel and communication. And Uranus, of course, rules accidents, sudden events, things like that. So something to just kind of be aware of. Take whatever extra precautions you need to around this new moon, because there is a heightened risk of that just due to the energy that we're moving through right now. Okay, so another surprises could get caught up in the energy of this new moon. So particularly that could be rebellious and unpredictable behavior, especially speaking our own inner rebelliousness, right? Or saying something impulsive. And that could get you into trouble. So just be aware. Uranus is playing with this new moon, and that will flavor how we experience it. But grab your pen and paper. What we'll do really quick is we'll jump into what house is for each of you by rising sign, and I'll go through what the themes of those houses are. And so if you have Aries rising, this is the 6th house full moon for you. So work, health, daily routines, habits. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. Habits. Employees can fall under the 6th house as well. That can include, say, if you own a company or you supervise employees. It can also include people who work for you, say, in your home. So if you have a gardener or a landscaper, or if someone comes over to clean your house a couple of times a month, those folks are considered your employees, astrologically speaking, and they would fall under 6th house matters. If you have Aries rising, that's what you're going to be working with tonight. For Taurus rising, it's 5th house. So creativity, children, love and romance, and not partnership, right? Not marriage. That's Venus through Libra. But the feeling of love, the heart-centered feeling of love, genuine love, may or may not come with a long-term committed relationship, right? Pleasurable activities also fall under the 5th house, including sports, and including things like risk-taking and gambling, okay? If you have Gemini rising, it's a 4th house new moon for you, so home or property-related new moon could also involve your family or your parents, or just real estate matters in general. And then the 4th house also governs later life. So I would say retirement age or beyond. If you are retirement age or beyond, it cover the time of life that you're in right now, if you're that age and you have a Gemini rising. Okay. For Cancer rising, this will be a 3rd house new moon. So travel and communication, but it's travel and communication that happened local to you, not instance. Childhood education falls under the 3rd house, as do siblings and extended family members like aunts and uncles and cousins, neighbors, and your immediate environment. For Leo rising, it's a 2nd house new moon. So earned income and expenses, wealth and possessions, but wealth and possessions are movable assets. So things like real estate, that doesn't move, doesn't belong to 2nd house. And then other people's money, of course, that's 8th house. But movable assets and the money you earn and how you spend it, that falls into the 2nd house for Leo rising. That's what you're working with tonight. Virgo rising is 1st house, of course. This is your birthday new moon, which is kind of exciting because when it's your birthday new moon, you get to use it any way that you want to. Now, the 1st house typically governs appearance and self-expression. So the personality, your behavior and mannerisms, your identity, but also self-expression your physical body and your appearance, and also the role that you play in the world. For instance, I have Gemini rising, and I tend to play the role of the communicator and sometimes the teacher. I explain ideas to people a lot in the course of the work that I do, okay? So for Virgo, you can choose to work with those themes of the first house, or if there's something in particular that you really want to use this new moon for, you can use it for that because it's your birthday. Happy birthday, Virgo. For Libra rising, it's a 12th house new moon. So privacy and seclusion, right? 12th house is where we withdraw from the world. Spirituality falls into the 12th house, the unconscious mind falls into the 12th house, and also our escapist tendencies and addictions or addictive behaviors, those also fall into the 12th house, okay? And then for Scorpio, 11th house new moon. So friends, organizations, hopes, and dreams. It's a wonderful chance if you have Scorpio rising to take a first step towards a long-held hope or dream that you might have that you're really wanting to accomplish or to manifest for yourself, okay? And then for Sagittarius rising, it's a 10th house new moon. So career and achievement, awards and recognition, status and reputation. The 10th house governs your public life. So the side of your life that everybody gets to see, okay? Not what happens in the home, but what happens outside of the home. For Capricorn rising, this is going to be a 9th house new moon. So that's national affairs. That's travel and communication that happen over long distances. It can also include communication that reaches large groups of people, that reaches across long periods of time. So things like publishing and broadcasting, especially things like books, those would fall under the 9th house, but also publicity tours, interviews, those things count. Legal and higher education also fall under the 9th house, as does religion and philosophy. So big ideas, that's 9th house territory. And I said law. Aquarius, 8th house. Okay, so this is other people's money. This is resources that come through the other people in your lives, and that includes money that you borrow, so any loans or debts that you have or you need to take out. It also includes taxes, because that's the government's money. It includes insurance. It includes inheritance, so money that comes to you through people when they die, when they pass. Wills and estates fall under the 8th house, as do bonus and commission income and winnings, like lottery winnings, any kind of windfall monies that come into your life that aren't part of regular income from the work that you do belong to the 8th house. And then also resources, so non-financial resources, but resources that come to you through other people belong in the 8th house as well. And then for Pisces, finally, it's a 7th house new moon for you. So partnership and marriage, business, relationships with other people in general belong to the 7th house, including open enemies. And if you're looking specifically at the descendant, that speaks to what we reject about ourselves. The 7th house can also talk about, we don't bring this up real often in the broadcast, but the 7th house can also talk about and point to what it is that we project onto other people. Like, so if you understand the psychological, trip over words, the psychological behavior of projection, right? When you project a behavior that you embody onto someone else and accuse them of doing that, that can also be seen in the 7th house, okay? So Virgo archetypes and Virgo themes. If anyone's joining late, let me say this first. If you're joining late, go ahead and type into the comments if you need me to recap what house this is falling in for you by your rising sign and what the themes of that house are. Let me know in the comments what your rising sign is, your sidereal rising sign, and recap for you. And in the meantime, we'll talk a little bit about the themes of Virgo. So Virgo is the constellation represented by the maiden. Okay. Sometimes she has wings like an angel, and oftentimes she's holding an ear of wheat. Okay, so this symbolizes both the bounty of nature and harvest as we're preparing for the coming winter months in the northern hemisphere. Okay, now you'll note that wings are also a common theme of Mercury ruled signs and symbolism. Okay, so that wings symbolism that we associate here truly relates with the planet Mercury, less so with Virgo. Okay, she's ruled by Mercury, which is the Roman, I want to say character, because I don't know that you'd necessarily consider Mercury one of the gods, or from the Greek tradition, Hermes Trismegistus. Okay, she's one of 2 points, the other being Pisces on the opposite side of the zodiac, where the celestial equator intersects with the ecliptic. Okay, so these 2 points are important distinctions between the tropical and the sidereal zodiacs. We're going to have a little lesson here on tropical and sidereal zodiac. There are important distinctions between those 2 zodiac systems as they represent the changing of the seasons, okay, where day and night are equal length. And we know these as the vernal and autumnal equinoxes, although I prefer the language the March equinox and the September equinox, because autumnal and vernal is relative to where you live in the northern or southern hemisphere. And one of the wonderful things about the sidereal is that you don't need any adjustments to calculating a birth chart for someone in the opposite hemisphere. Okay? So for simplicity's sake, especially when I'm using the sidereal zodiac, I like to just refer to them as the March equinox and September equinox, because then we can all agree on which equinox we're talking about rather than saying spring and the autumnal, right? And the vernal. So in the tropical zodiac, the vernal point, that March equinox, is held to be the static starting point of the zodiac, 0 degrees Aries, okay? But it's important to note that the equinoxes actually move backwards through zodiac over time, very slowly. It's called precession of the equinoxes. You've probably heard of that phrase, even if you never really quite understood what it means. So slowly that it only changes 1 degree every 72 years, which is roughly an average human lifespan. Okay, equinoctial precession is what we call it. And what this means is that while 0 degrees Aries used to mark the March equinox and 0 Libra used to mark the September equinox about 2,000 years ago, that isn't the case anymore. Now the equinoxes actually happen in Pisces and not in Aries and Libra. Okay, so this is the big difference between the sidereal and the tropical zodiacs. 2,000 years ago, when the tropical zodiac was first created, it was created as a solar calendar, as an agricultural calendar, right? It helped very well to describe the changing of the seasons, and it gave farmers of the time a wonderful calendar for knowing when to plant and when to harvest. And it worked beautifully for that purpose. And 2,000 years ago, when it was created, both of those zodiacs lined up exactly at the vernal point. You could find degrees of Aries if you were looking out at the night sky. Okay? Now, because of equinoctial precession, they've drifted apart over the years. So they don't agree anymore, and that's why the vernal and autumnal no longer fall in Aries and Libra. They fall in Pisces and Virgo. Okay? Back then, though, when the tropical was created, all the astrologers that lived in Greece, that practiced in Greece and through the rest of the world, they all used the sidereal zodiac. That was the original zodiac that they used. And in fact, the tropical zodiac didn't come into common usage for another several hundred years after it was created. We Westerners gradually forgot about the sidereal system over time. It was in the West. And it highlights really this particular thing that I'm describing to you, highlights one of the biggest arguments that we get in astrology from scientific communities about the validity of what we do. That because the zodiac that's most commonly used in astrology has no basis in reality, and it has no basis in science. It's not scientifically accurate. It's not astronomically accurate. It doesn't describe what's actually going on with the planets and the stars and the constellations. On the other hand, the sidereal zodiac is anchored to the stars, and that's why it moves backwards, right? That's why someone born on the 15th of April 2,000 years ago would have been born in a different sun sign than someone born on the 15th of April today, okay? Because it moves with precession and constellations, so that the signs and the constellations that they represent are always in alignment, okay? But let's get back to Virgo. So Virgo, as an archetype, she's the maiden, right? She's the healer, the servant. These are perhaps the healer and the servant, two of her most important archetypes. And I want you to recall for a minute that Mercury rules two signs. He rules Gemini and he rules Virgo. And Mercury, as the wing-footed messenger of the gods, is the archetype that we associate with Gemini. Travel and communication, okay? But Mercury, as Hermes Trismegistus, symbolized by the caduceus, the symbol of modern-day doctors, that's the archetype of Mercury that rules Virgo. Virgo, the healer, okay? So you may have noticed that Virgo often is symbolized in astrology with a stylized MRX, right? The shorthand for that ends up being the M with the little curl at the end, right? But the notation that early astrologers would have used is MRX, which is the same notation that we use for Mercury retrograde, right? That signifies Mercury's association with Virgo as the healer, okay? Because you'll also notice that astrological notation for retrograde is still used by the medical community to indicate a pharmaceutical prescription, right? RX is the shorthand for script. So there's a great deal of astrological symbology still in use in the modern world today in this way, especially if you know what you're looking at. And a lot of it does exist around the medical profession, which is kind of interesting because astrology used to be required learning for healers and doctors. In fact, Hippocrates, from whom we get the Hippocratic Oath, he himself once said that a physician without the knowledge of astrology has no right to call himself a physician, okay? Now, Virgo is perfectionist, okay? Virgo is analytical. You could associate that with the practice of diagnosing. She's also critical, okay? She's the real counterpart to spiritual Pisces. She's practical. She's concerned with effectiveness, order, cleanliness, hygiene, daily routine, real life, not escaping from real life, which belongs to Pisces. Okay. Virgo also rules health, which Hippocrates also spoke about when he said, "Let food be thy medicine, and medicine thy food." Okay, so these are very much Virgo concepts and Virgo themes that we associate very heavily with the medical community, with health and food, because they're all intrinsically tied. So we're going to set our intentions here in just a moment. So I want you to get your pen and paper ready. And as you set your intentions for this new moon in Virgo, some of the things that I want you to consider, and you don't necessarily need to work with all of these prompts, just whichever ones speak to you most clearly, okay? What is your purest intention for the part of your life where Aries falls in your natal chart, for that particular house? What is your absolute purest intention that you want to manifest that house? And what new routine could you establish that would help you be more effective in the house that Virgo occupies in your natal chart? What new orderliness, you could say, can you bring to that area of your life? Or even hygiene, right? We could talk about cleaning house in that area of life. What new good habit could you begin on this moon that would contribute to a healthier lifestyle in the area of your life that Virgo rules? Or what illness or trauma could you heal that may be holding you back from manifesting what you really want? What illness or trauma can you begin to heal so that you can make room to invite healthy behaviors in? So that you can make room to invite health in. Okay? That leads to a whole nother conversation about ease and dis-ease, and dis-ease being the source of disease and ill health. It all starts with being ill at ease in some way, and most of the time when we're ill at ease with something, it's going on in our head more than anywhere else. And what goes on in our head is what we experience in our broader reality. Okay? So Mercury, ruling the mind, ruling thoughts and mental activity. This can be a wonderful time to institute new habits in terms of retraining your thinking, retraining your mind and your thought patterns, okay? Because thought patterns are basically just habits that go on inside your head and not necessarily in the world. And with Virgo, we're very well positioned to be dealing with instituting brand new healthy habits, okay? Also consider, in what ways can you begin being of selfless service? And when we say service, we mean being of service to other people in the world. Okay, Virgo is the sign of service and servitude. And that's not to say that it's uncompensated service, okay? The work that we do in the 6th house is what we get paid for in the 2nd house, okay? But the work that we do that we get paid for nearly always is work that helps someone else in some way to achieve something that they're wanting to achieve, to get something that they don't have. So in what ways can you begin being of service to other people in the world? And then finally, after you're done writing down your intention around what it is you want to begin, what healthy habit, what you want next, I want you to spend time thinking about and visualizing the actual end outcome. What does that end result look like for you? What would be the perfect end result outcome? When you're done getting clear about that perfect end result outcome, and when you're done writing out your statement of intent for what you want to bring into your life, I want you to also write an affirmation. And when you write this affirmation, write it around it helping to reinforce what that intention is. Okay? And then even if you don't want to share what your intention is, if you could share your affirmation in the comments, that would be absolutely wonderful. But let's take a few moments to sit down and write out what our intentions are and to write out what that affirmation that we want to use. And so I'm going to read to you before we get started out of the Moon Gazing Journal that I write my intentions in. And today it says, sleepwalking has often been blamed on the full moon and is sometimes called moonwalking. There you go. So everyone take a few minutes. Write out your intention for what it is you want to begin with this new moon, or what it is you want to manifest in association with this new moon, and then write out your affirmation for that intention. And we'll reconnect here in just a few minutes. I think I know affirmation I want to use in conjunction with this intention. So I have Gemini rising, and that makes this a, oh, oops, I just lost my place. That's okay. So this makes it a 4th house new moon for me, which is home, family, property, parents, that sort of thing. And so I kind of went 2 approaches, of course, Mercury, right? Ha, ha, ha. So I went 2 approaches. I intend to create the habit of reaching out to my mother on a regular basis and to spend more time in conversation with her more frequently. My mom lives some distance away from me, so I don't get to see her very often, not even once a year. And those of you who've been in the group for a while may know she was recently diagnosed with breast cancer. We found out in August that she had breast cancer. And so that kind of really drove it home for me how how impermanent that is to have your parents in your life with you. I've already lost my father. I lose my mother on top of that. And thankfully, she's coming through it very well. She's healing very well. The process is very good and positive for her, which is exciting. But it really woke me up to the fact that I go far too long in terms of stretches of time without speaking with her and having conversations, just catching up and seeing how life is and how she is, and talking about how I am when she wants to know, what I'm up to and all that. And so that's been on the forefront of my mind a lot lately, that I really want to be better about staying in touch with my mother. And really, honestly, hopefully that will have a knockoff effect of being better with staying in touch with other people in my lives, because that's one of the things I'm kind of horrible at. Like, I don't pick up the phone and call people. I don't write letters. Like, I write letters back. Okay, so like if you write me a letter, I'll probably write you a letter back. But being the one to initiate writing a letter doesn't come to me very automatically. And I'm not like, I hate talking on the phone. Like, I love talking on the phone to people that I love, right? People I care about. I'll talk on the phone for hours. But I hate talking on the phone in the sense that it's harder to communicate, right? There's more interrupting or talking over people. There's no body language to judge by what the conversation cues are. And so I'd rather people in person, or even, like on a video call. To me, even that's easier. But I'm horrible about picking up the phone and calling people. And so, yes, that's one of my intentions, my main intention, my first intention, to create that habit of being in closer touch with my own mother, because I love her very much, and she's an important part of my life. But I also wrote that I intend to adopt a schedule of yearly and semi-annual habits related to my property and my home life. And this is something that I've had in the back of my brain for several years. I've done it in the past. I do it off and on. Consistently? No, I don't. And that's what I would like to do, is develop this pattern of consistency, which is a habit, right? That's a habit. Related to my home and my home life and my property, to include gardening, starting seeds every spring and preparing for the gardening. I always talk about that. I have seeds. Do I ever start them? No. I did one year and I've never done it since. To starting seeds every spring, harvesting and storing, pruning and prepping for the coming growing season in November of each year, which is coming up. I tend to do my pruning in February, and what I find is that I don't get as good of harvest doing it that late in the season, because I'm cutting off bud sites that would otherwise be fruiting. And so it's just, I've come to the realization that I need to do it in November and give the trees and the shrubbery and the grapevines and whatnot a chance to recover, because those buds do grow very slowly throughout the winter. They just don't grow as fast as they do in the spring when it's warm and there's sun, right? And so pruning earlier in the winter, that's going to be my new approach, so that we can have improved harvest off, because we have a lot of fruit trees on our property. We have a lot of on our property. We have walnuts on our property. And I tend to, like I said, that I do all of those things in February, and where I live, that is just too close to spring. So November it is, and this will be the year that I start that, thankfully. What's wonderful about this year is that I have the planner done already, because in past years, in October and November, that's what I've been working on, sometimes quite heavily. It takes many, many hours to put the planners together. Usually I'm working on those, and so I don't have time to get out into the yard to do these things. But this year, I'm going to change that. And then my last intention that I wrote down is I intend to rebuild the raised garden beds that I have right outside that window on the outside of my house. We have raised garden beds where I tend to plant things like tomatoes and cucumbers and squash and all sorts of delicious stuff. And I didn't plant in here because one of the raised beds is starting to disintegrate. The wood was never treated before the beds were made by the previous owner. And so, of course, they've rotted out. And I bought this year the materials that I needed to rebuild those beds, but I did not have time in my schedule to actually do the work. So my intention is to actually do that work this fall as well, as a step towards being ready for my spring season. And that way, in February, instead of pruning, I can be starting seeds, and they can go into the brand new rebuilt beds. So I'm going to establish a gardening tradition and a yearly schedule of tasks that need to be done every year, and use that to create habits around those tasks that need to be done. So that's what I'm doing. And then I did find, this is one of my favorite affirmations, and it's kind of related to gardening and harvest and abundance in that way. And so I think it's a perfect one to use for those intentions that I've set tonight. So I love it. And I think this comes from Bringers of the Dawn by Barbara Marciniak. I'm pretty sure that's where I got this affirmation. It is my intention that I be well provided for, that shelter and food and all of the things that I need to experience life be given to me in great abundance, and that I pass this abundance on and share it with others. And oh boy, is that not my intention. And I will be sharing walnuts very abundantly. We've had probably the best walnut harvest this year that I have ever seen since we bought our property. They are literally just falling off the tree perfectly. Like, all I have to do is walk out and pick them up. And if you've ever lived around walnuts or grown walnuts yourselves, that's literally the way that they're supposed to work. They're just supposed to, the green holes that they grow in are supposed to split open and the walnut's supposed to drop to the ground. That has never happened here. They fall with the hole still on. And then what I end up having to do is crack that off and wash them and dry them. It's this huge big process. And not this year. It's just walk out with a bag and pick them up off the ground, and it's beautiful, and I love it, and I want that to happen every year. But I have a lot of walnuts. I'll be giving a lot of walnuts away this year. Anyway, so if you would like to share your intentions in the comments on the video, that'd be wonderful. If you'd like to share your affirmation in the comments on the video, that is also well encouraged. What I want to point out to you tonight, so we do our moon intention setting the day before the new moon, and that's so that I can have the video published for folks who live in other parts of the world on the day of the new moon. And then typically what we recommend is that you take your first action toward the intention that you're setting at the first light of the new moon, which would happen typically about 2 days after the actual new moon. You'll see this sliver as it very initially begins to wax. Okay? So this new moon, the best days for you to take those steps happen to line up with the day that you should see the first sliver of light from a waxing moon. So the best days to take your first steps towards your intention are going to be the 12th and the 15th of October. Okay, that's when we're going to have the most supportive astrological conditions for your efforts. And it's always important when you take your first step, the moment that you make that step, that you take it, that is the moment that we would use for your birth chart. That exact day and time and that hour and minute and that place. That's what we would create the birth chart, that event on, or that intention or ambition, whatever it is. And so it's very important to be cognizant of what's going on astrologically with the planets in their positions, where they're at in the sky, what aspects they're making, because that's the energy that is going to be built into the DNA, whatever it is you're starting. Okay. And we do have some challenging aspects going on just at and after this particular new moon. And so really the best days that you could use, where you have some of the most supportive aspects that you would actually want built into that natal chart for your endeavor, those are happening on the 12th and the 15th. So I would use those days to make your initiations. You could use either one. The energy is strongest the closer to the lunation that you start. So you could even make your first step on the 12th, and then you could use the 15th to continue and kind of build on that momentum. Okay. So a few announcements. The October full horoscopes by sign are up at the website. Read them if you haven't. They're long this month. Very long. September and October and November of this year are very aspect heavy. And so for those 3 months, the horoscopes are going to run longer than normal. In terms of page count, I estimated about 80 pages was the page count total for what I wrote for all 12 of the signs, the general monthly overview that you read first, that kind of gives you a broad look, not from any particular sign perspective. So it's a lot, but I would encourage you to read the overview, read for your sun sign, and read for your rising sign. So pour a beverage and put your feet up. Get comfortable is what I'm trying to say. And you'll really want to read for both your sun and your rising sign this time around, because Venus is retrograde. And you're going to want to know what you can do and how to use that particular 6 week retrograde and how it can affect you. And you'll get a clear picture if you read for both your sun and your rising sign, especially for the retrograde. Be sure also subscribe to the YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook, Mystick, Physick, Astrology on Facebook. You can join, of course, the Sidereal Insights Astrology Facebook group, where we host these new moon and full moon live streams. The new YouTube channel, as opposed to the old YouTube channel, I'll post a link for that. I did have to create a whole new channel and start from scratch. So even if you subscribed to the old one, resubscribe to the new one, because the old one is going to go away. If I keep saying that, I haven't got around to finishing it up yet. Also, new for this year, so the 2019 Ultimate Astrological Planner, yay, is out. It's available. It's been released. You can buy it. And what's awesome is that if you need a planner now and you don't have one, you can get the academic planner. That includes from August of this year till August of next year. You don't have a planner that's going to start in January, although I made one of those too. So you can get either kind you need. It also comes now in disc bound, and I have an example, not of my planner, but of what a disc bound notebooks look like. Some of you know what they are. I know Jonna does, because Jonna makes disc bound accessories and disc bound notebooks. So they're just held together with these little discs, and I love them because they're totally like, you can customize it. You can take it back together. You can rearrange stuff. You can buy all sorts of cool inserts and accessories to go with these, and they come in different sizes. So the disc bound option is one now, which means you could buy one and keep the cover and just swap out the calendar pages every year if you want to, just buy refills. Or you can continue to get the comb bound planner, or the centerfold with the staples. That's still available too. But I did another thing this year. And every year I tend to have folks reach out to me and say, hey, can you make me this, but can you make it this size smaller? So I just went ahead and made those sizes. So now if you use, like, say, a passion planner or a happy planner or an Erin Condren planner, or if you use the Yves Saint Laurent, like the little pocket planner, the tiny one that's only like 3x5, I resized all of the planner pages for those sizes of planners. So you can buy downloadable files and print yourself for your own planner, so you can crop and punch them and use them for your own planner. If you have a planner system that you already love, you can keep using it, but you can use the Ultimate Astrological Planner in it. Okay, so all sorts of new and exciting and cool stuff for the Ultimate Astrological Planner this year. You can check those things out at physick.com/2019. Okay. And please like and share this broadcast if you know someone who might benefit from watching, might benefit from the conversation that we have, what we're talking about today. Like and share. You can tag them, especially if they're here in the group. One more thing, though, and I'll talk more about this. It's kind of an aside. I'll talk more about this on tomorrow's update. Mercury retrograde is a coming. Okay, we have one Mercury retrograde yet this year. Towards the end of this month, when Mercury moves into Scorpio, he's also going to be entering the shadow of that retrograde. So we're going to start to feel the earliest effects of it beginning the 27th of October, which of course that's later in the month. That's not here. It's not right now. It's not super urgent. However, this is a good time to be thinking about what you're going to do to prepare, because anything to prepare in advance for Mercury retrograde is always advised. It makes the Mercury retrograde experience go a lot sooner if you can take time out to prepare for it. And so what I would encourage you to do is to check out the Mercury Retrograde Survival Guide at mystickphysick.com. I did write a short blog post giving you a little bit of information about what you know in advance, how you can plan for it, how you can use it, things to do, things not to do. And then a little bit of information house by house so that you can look at, oh, where in my chart is this falling this time? Mercury's going to be retrograde in Scorpio. You can look to your Scorpio house. What house is that? And you can work with the retrograde in that house energy, right? So there's a little bit about that. But I have a guide that you can buy that goes into much more detail. And house by house applications for Mercury retrograde are much more expanded in the guide. So I would suggest get a copy of that guide. If you don't have it already, grab a copy, because it's something you're going to come back to 3 to 4 times a year. Every time Mercury retrogrades, you can go back to that guide. You can look at what house the retrograde is falling in, and you decide how you want to use it. Okay. So the reason that I made this guide is because so many people dread Mercury retrograde, right? They're like, oh my God, are you serious? Mercury retrograde again. So many people feel like that when Mercury is retrograde, that what can go wrong will go wrong. And that's just it. And what I want you to know is that it doesn't have to be that way. And so in my in-depth guide on Mercury retrograde, what I include are all my complete strategies for what to do if you can't avoid taking certain actions during the retrograde. And then, of course, like I said, there are expanded house by house strategies for using the retrograde to your advantage. And you can refer back to it every time Mercury goes retrograde. So if you got the guide, you'll learn in it what critical action you should avoid during every Mercury retrograde cycle, if you at all can. What you can do to protect yourself from Mercury's misbehavior, and how you can really any Mercury retrograde around and actually put it to work for you. You can make it. It goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of the broadcast about responding to our transits, right? Rather than reacting to them. Well, Mercury retrograde happens to everybody. And so it's one that we can all benefit from learning how to respond to rather than react to. So that Mercury retrograde survival guide is going to teach you specific steps that you can take to prepare for the retrograde so that it's, smooth sailing. It's going to teach you how to get deliberate about using the retrograde energy in your own personal natal blueprint for maximum potential. Okay. And it's going to show you how to know where to dive deep and consciously explore your life so that retrograde Mercury is actually working with you and not working against you, right? So that with just a little bit of advanced preparation, a few basic precautions, you can align your actions and your intention with whatever Mercury's plans are for you and take charge of your retrograde experience. And so normally I offer the guide. It's a ebook download. Normally I offer it for $17.99. Right now it's on sale for $12.99. That's only for a limited time though, so you're going to want to get a copy right away, but I will include a link in the video description so that you can go grab your copy for $12.99 and keep it handy, because you will come back to it, like I said, 3 to 4 times every time that Mercury is retrograde. And thank you for those of you who joined me. Thank you for watching the broadcast. It's good to have everyone with me on the broadcast. We'll see you again next time. Thanks for watching.